I'm Emily, 34, female. This year has been a roller coaster, and the source of it all is none other than my younger brother, Alex, 32, male. Honestly, after the crap he pulled, I don't think I have it in me to forgive him. Growing up, he was always a bit of a brat, you know? The kind of guy who wanted to be the center of attention in every room. I think the kids are calling it a himbo or something. Correct me if I'm wrong. I put the blame squarely on my mom. She was basically obsessed with him and gave him everything he ever wanted. As a result, my relationship with her was pretty sour. She would always favor him and let him do anything he wanted. Meanwhile, I felt like she was trying to compete with me or just make me feel like crap. Her internalized misogyny was what drove us apart, and I was done with her BS by the time I was 15. Of course, things were awkward between us, but I didn't give a damn because she never gave a damn about me. Turns out I wasn't the only one in the house who had problems with her. My dad, Oliver, 60, male, was also sick of her BS. They were constantly arguing, and it wasn't great for any of us. When our parents got divorced, I started seeing Alex's true colors. A divorce is tough on any kid, no doubt. I was sad to see my parents split, but in my humble opinion, Alex took it to a whole new level. He went out of his way to deliberately piss me and Dad off when Mom had to leave. It wasn't just little things like neglecting chores. We're talking about countless incidents where either my dad or I had to bail him out of jail during our teenage years. There came a point in time when we were young adults where I was the only one who knew about his petty charges. Hello. It's me. What the hell is going on now, Alex? Look, I need your help. I'm in a bit of trouble. Trouble again? What did you do this time? It's a misunderstanding, okay? I need you to bail me out, please. Bail you out? Are you serious? I don't have the money for that kind of drama, Alex. I just moved out. You know this. Come on, you've helped me before. Just one more time, please. I promise I'll pay you back. This is getting old, Alex. I can't keep cleaning up your messes. Why can't you stay out of trouble? It's complicated. Look, I just need a little help right now. I'm stuck in here. I don't want to stay the night. Maybe you should stay the night. Might teach you a lesson for once. Come on, Em, don't be like that. I need you, please. Like I said, I'm broke right now. Sorry you wasted your one phone call. Maybe try Dad another time. No, excuse me. I don't know where you get the nerve yelling at me like that when you're the one coming to me for help. Sorry, I'm so sorry. I've been so stressed out, and the last thing I need is Dad hounding me on this. What's the big deal? He's helped you out tons of other times. Yeah, well, he sat me down not long after you moved out and told me that if he had to bail me out one more time, he'd remove me from the business and the will. Yikes. I know, which is why he can't know about this. Please promise me you won't say anything to him. I seriously considered snitching on him at that moment. Why wouldn't I? He's been an ass since the day he was born. Why the hell would I want to help him out when he's been such a pain? Because he's my brother, that's why. That was my reasoning. Nothing is important if you don't have your family's back, so I knew I had to help him out. Fine, I'll figure something out, but this is the last time. I mean it, and you better pay me back. Thank you, Em. You're a lifesaver. With interest. Don't worry, sis. When I take over the company, I'll be sure to give you as much money as you want. You're pushing it, buddy. Thanks once again. Em, I owe you one. At this rate, you owe me at least 10. Surprise, surprise, y'all. He ended up in jail not even 3 months after that, and guess who had to bail him out again? You might think I was an enabler, and maybe it was to a certain extent, but I just didn't know what to do. Could you blame me? I was like 21 and dumb, but not as dumb as he was, obviously. It was a roller coaster of being pissed off, having hope that things would change, and being let down and then being pissed off all over again. It's like he had some hidden agenda to drive me and our dad crazy. We reached a breaking point, and once I finished college, we stopped talking for a while. I'm not going to lie, those couple of years without him were so peaceful. I thought that we were just destined to be estranged siblings. It wasn't what I wanted, but I had to distance myself to protect my peace. But then tragedy struck. My mom passed away when I was 24 and Alex was 22. It hit us like a ton of bricks. Even Dad, who couldn't stand her, was crushed by her sudden death. She had a skydiving accident that ended with a broken neck. Yeah, awful. The funeral became a turning point for all of us. In the middle of the grief and loss, we felt a shared responsibility to mend our broken relationship. It was like a wake-up call. a reminder that life is short and family should be there for each other. We decided, for Mom's sake, to put aside our differences and try to rebuild what we once had. Dad, Alex and I were just talking about how we should try and mend things, for Mom. I think that's a good idea. Yeah, I've been thinking about it too. Maybe it's time to turn things around. I mean, we can't change the past, but we can certainly work on our future. I'm proud to hear you say that. It's important for us to stick together. I know I've messed up a lot, Dad, but I want to change for Mom and for all of us. We need to be there for each other, and not just because we're family, but because we genuinely care about each other. Your mom would be happy to hear that. Now more than ever, it's crucial for us to support one another. Let's make Mom proud. That's the spirit. And we also have the family business to think about. We need to work together to make it successful. Things already didn't work out with your mom and me. I don't want to see the same thing happen between you two, between any of us really. Right, business is important. We should put our differences aside for the sake of its success. I think this is a fresh start for all of us so we can make this work. I don't know if it was the euphoria from all the grieving that made us all want to sing Kumbaya together, but whatever it was wore off almost immediately. However, I soon discovered that old habits die hard. Alex started his BS again, and my mom wasn't even cold in the grave. He was a loser and a nobody, always being a creep and committing petty crimes and ending up in a jail cell. It was exhausting. It seemed like he forgot the heart-to-heart we had just a couple of months ago. It wasn't long before he pulled a stunt that cut deeper than anything before. This year, he did something that shattered the fragile peace we tried to establish. It's a betrayal and not sure I can forgive. You see, even though Alex was back on his BS, I was determined not to see him slip and fall this time. As an older sister, I felt like it was my duty to at least try. Even if he wasn't holding up his end of the bargain of trying to have a better relationship, I would plan for us to go to dinner or brunch. We'd go rock climbing and also play golf. You name it, we did it all for the sake of getting closer and closer. But more often than not, he would ditch me at the last minute, saying that he had some important stuff to do and couldn't come. Which was funny to me because this man barely did any work on the family business, so I wondered what was eating up his free time. I had to pay for everything all the time out of the kindness of my heart, and he still had the audacity to cancel on me and not make an effort to be a better brother and son. I would talk to my dad about it, and he would complain as well. It wasn't easy on him either, seeing his son not stepping up to the plate. It was frustrating because we all wanted to honor Mom's memory by being a stronger, more supportive family, but Alex just seemed stuck. One day, when I was finishing up at work with my dad, I started complaining again. Dad, I can't believe Alex canceled on me again. It's like he doesn't care about trying to be a better person or a better brother. I know, Emily, it's frustrating for me too. I've tried talking to him, but it seems like he's stuck in his ways. I'm just tired of making an effort when he doesn't seem to care. I want us to be a stronger family. Did he forget what we talked about when Mom died? Kiddo, you can try your hardest to change someone, but it will never work. They have to be willing to change all by themselves. I guess you're right, which is why I wanted to talk to you about something. What's up, Dad? Well, it's about the business. As you know, I'm getting old. Oh, really? I couldn't tell. Don't be an ass. Anyways, I'm getting old and I can't keep working. I've been thinking a lot about the family business. Wait, are you about to give me the keys to this place? Wasn't this meant to be split between Alex and me? I want to see it in good hands, Emily. I've seen your dedication and hard work. You've got the skills, and I believe you could take it to new heights. Dad, I appreciate the vote of confidence, but what about Alex? Shouldn't he be a part of this too? I mean, I know he's a screw-up, but Emily, I've given Alex many chances. It's clear he's not interested in stepping up. I need someone I can trust to lead the business into the future. Dad, I'm honored, but this is a lot. I never expected this. You've earned it, Emily. Your commitment to the family, your responsibility, it hasn't gone unnoticed. I want you to take the reins. It's just, it feels like Alex is being left out. Emily, I love both of you, but I need to be realistic. I can't force him to change. I can only hope he finds his way. This way, at least the business is secure, and you can continue our family legacy. It sounds awful to say as a parent, but I've done the best I can with that boy, and he's a grown man now. So he can make his own decisions and I can make mine. That's why I want you to be the sole inheritor of this place. I understand, Dad. It's really tough seeing him like this. Even tougher trying to deal with the crap. You're telling me? I just hope he won't take the news too hard. I do too, sweetheart, but right now, we need to focus on what we can control, and that's making sure the business thrives. I know you can do it. Dad deciding I'd take over the family business was like a dream come true for me. I always wanted to run things, you know? But breaking the news to Alex needed finesse, so I figured a hiking trip might set the tone. We used to love hiking when we were kids, so I thought, why not? The day arrived, and things seemed chill. Alex was surprisingly in a good mood, and for a moment, I thought, hey, this might go well. We were hiking for about an hour or so before I decided to sit him down on one of the rocks and tell him the tea. Hey, Alex, let's stop for a second. We need to talk. Yeah, what's up? Dad's been doing a lot of thinking, and he's decided to pass the business over to me. Instead of cheering me on, he got all worked up, accusing me of stealing his spotlight, which is crazy because did he honestly think that he would be in charge when he's landing in jail like every other day? I'm there trying to share good news, and he's turning it into a drama fest. The hiking trip meant for bonding became this heated argument, and it was getting worse. What? You're kidding, right? That's supposed to be mine. Look, I get it's a shock, but Dad thinks I'm more suited to run things. It's nothing personal. More suited? That's BS. You two think you're so high and mighty. If Mom was here, she wouldn't stand for this crap. Do you even know about running a business? More than you. Oh, is that so? Well, good luck trying to run a business as a woman. You're going to take everything that Dad has worked hard for. Looks like the apple didn't fall far from the tree, huh? What's that supposed to mean? It means you're a misogynistic a-hole, just like your mother. I can't believe I came on this stupid bonding hike with you. You've always taken everything away from me, and now this. Why does Dad think that you would do a better job? I've been working alongside him for years, Alex. I know the ropes. I know how everything functions and how everything works. I don't care. It's not fair. I've been wanting this for ages. We continued bickering, oblivious to the hiking group passing by. It didn't matter to us. Our family drama was on full display as we were left behind by the other hikers. Alex suddenly took things to a dangerous level. He said, I don't care what you two think. I'm getting that business one way or another. Before I could even respond, he did the unthinkable. He pushed me. Yep, you heard that right. This man pushed me off the ledge. I tumbled off the side of the mountain, rolling and rolling. Thankfully, I eventually came to a stop. Now, this next part was really foggy, but I remember seeing Alex's silhouette from where I fell, and he walked away, following the other hikers. Then everything went to black. Waking up in the hospital was disorienting. Of course, it felt like there were 1,000 needles piercing through my arms and legs. My dad was there, looking genuinely concerned, but Alex immediately dismissed my attempt to share the truth. What an ass. Dad, what happened? What's going? Ow, what the hell? Shh, don't move. You had a pretty nasty fall on your hiking trip with Alex. You need to be more careful, Em. The doctor said it could have been worse. Why can't I move my body? You have 7 broken bones. 7. Yep, 7. You need to be more careful, sis. I told you to watch where you were going. What? What are you talking about? The last thing I remember. Oh my God, Alex, you... No, don't get all worked up. You need to rest, remember? Dad, I need to tell you something. I didn't fall. Alex pushed me. Dad, she's delusional from all the pain meds. She doesn't know what she's talking about. No, Dad, he pushed me. He deliberately pushed me off the edge. Dad, she's obviously making things up. Can't say I blame her. I'd be pretty pissed if I fell off a mountain. But I didn't fall. You freaking pushed me, you psychopath, and then you abandoned me. You really tried to kill me. Dad, you gotta believe me. Dad, I didn't want to say this considering, but I figure now's as good a time as any. She's obviously accident-prone, and the business needs a capable owner, not someone who's always getting injured. What? I mean, who knows? She might have some irreparable brain damage. That's why she sounds so cuckoo bananas. After Alex finished lying, I was pissed off. Before I could call him out anymore, he said he had to skedaddle because he had some important business to attend to. Yeah, like we haven't heard that one before. He probably went off to commit more crimes. Dad had to discharge me from the hospital, and we headed home in a strange silence. The plan was for me to live with him until I recovered, and our childhood home was accommodating for my current state, thanks to the wheelchair accessibility installed for our late Graham. Things between my dad and me were a bit awkward, and I didn't think to start telling him that Alex was lying in case he actually believed what his idiot son said. Alex, in typical fashion, had vanished for 3 whole days with no contact, leaving me to wonder if he had just an ounce of guilt for what he did. Like I said, 3 days had passed, and I was chilling with my dad when he finally decided to grace us with his presence. He strutted in as if he owned the place, convinced that the business was now his for the taking. But the tables were about to turn. My dad, with a heavy heart, dropped a bombshell that left Alex in shock. Oliver stood firm as Alex swaggered into the house, misplaced confidence written all over his face. His eyes darted between me and Dad, expecting to find the triumphant atmosphere he had envisioned. "Well, look who's back. I hope you're ready to hand over what's rightfully mine, Emily." "Rightfully yours? You pushed me off a cliff, Alex. You're lucky Dad isn't pressing charges. When are you going to stop with the lies, Emily?" "Alex, I've heard enough. You're not taking over, and you're not welcome here anymore." I loved seeing Alex's jaw hit the floor when he realized his plans had blown up. His hopes of taking charge crumbled, and he learned he couldn't dodge the consequences of his actions. Dad told Alex he couldn't trust him anymore and that the business was mine. Dad said he believed what I was saying. Finally, it felt so good knowing that my dad took my side. "Dad, are you serious?" "I am dead serious. You tried to kill your sister, Alex. Your actions are inexcusable, and I won't tolerate them. You need to leave now. You're choosing her over me, Dad. Typical. You never liked me. I'm choosing the truth over lies. You're my son. I've always loved you, but you forget Emily's my kid too, and she deserves justice for what you did to her." "Justice? She fell. It was an accident." "No, Alex. I believe Emily, and I think you should be in the slammer for what you did. And this time, no one's going to bail you out." "Dad, you can't be serious." "I've never been more serious. Get out, Alex. You're not welcome here." With that, Alex was left standing in the doorway, his huge expectations shattered while Dad and Ann told him to leave before we called the cops. "You can't do this to me. I won't let you." "Bold of you to assume you had a choice. You did. Now you're going to rot in jail. Everything you did was for nothing." But this isn't fair. You did this to yourself, Alex. Emily's building the case against you, and I'm disgusted by your actions. I'm just glad your mother isn't around to see how much of a failure you've become. You're a disc. Alex, I hate to say it, but I never want to see you again, and I'm sure your sister feels the same way. "Please, Dad, Emily. Wait, I messed up, but I can change. Don't do this to me, please." "It's too late for that, Alex. You made your bed. Now lie in it." The days that followed were all over the place. After getting kicked out, Alex just vanished, and Dad and I were so angry and depressed from the whole thing. It was pretty shocking that my own brother would try to kill me or, at the very least, cause some serious harm like that. When Alex went MIA for those 3 days, I finally broke down in front of my dad. I begged him to believe me, and what he told me shocked me. Apparently, he believed me all along and was ready to cut Alex off for good. It was just that he was in denial because the whole situation felt so surreal. It was pretty rough for my dad to realize what his son was capable of. Word on the street was that Alex was thinking of skipping town, so I had to move fast to make sure he faced the music. I got myself a lawyer and started the whole suing process, aiming to get him for everything he had and then booking him for attempted murder. It was my way of making sure he faced the music for what he did. The road ahead is going to be tough, emotionally, physically, and legally, but I'm ready to take it on. I want justice, and I'm not going to stop until I get it.
My name is Luna. I've been married to Lucas for 3 years. We used to live alone when we were dating. But after we got married, we moved in with Lucas's dad because his job was close by. I kept working even after we got married, but I had to quit my job because Lucas's dad needed help. He started showing signs of forgetting things about 1.5 years ago, and it got worse over time. We thought about putting him in a nursing home, but Lucas wanted me to take care of him at home. "Luna, please, let's take care of my dad at home. It's better for his health." "I get it, but I've only been here for 2 years. I don't think your dad wants me to take care of him all the time. Please help me out as much as you can." I had never seen my husband beg like this before, so I trusted that he would help me with the caregiving. But once I actually started looking after his dad, I realized there were challenges I hadn't anticipated. Simple tasks like going up and down stairs, using the toilet, and taking a bath became risky at home. Even though my father-in-law could still walk, he often stumbled on the stairs and had accidents in the bathroom because he couldn't support himself. So, after discussing with my husband, we decided to renovate the house. Despite still being in debt, we prioritized my father-in-law's safety over money. At first, my husband took charge of caregiving after the renovations, but gradually he stopped, blaming his workload for his absence. After a year of caring for my father-in-law, my husband gradually stopped pitching in, even going out on his days off. As my father-in-law's condition worsened, I found myself handling tasks like toileting and bathing alone. Eventually, it became too overwhelming, and I had to talk to my husband about it. You promised to help, remember? When was the last time you did anything? It's been months. He seems content with the care he's receiving, and I can't manage everything alone anymore. I've realized the challenges firsthand. Maybe we should consider a nursing home instead of trying to manage at home. We made the decision to provide home care, and we should see it through till the end. At the very least, I believe we should consider hiring professional caregivers. Your father needs assistance, and there are certified professionals who can provide that help. I'm not physically capable of handling everything, and I think certain tasks like feeding should be left to the professionals. When I proposed this, my husband didn't agree and left before we could finish our conversation. Lately, I've noticed he's been stressed about money. However, I couldn't manage caregiving alone anymore. So without his approval, I began arranging for home care services. Since his father required level 3 care, we arranged for a caregiver to come about 5 times a week for an hour each day. We'd also worked out a plan covered by long-term care insurance, so I wasn't concerned about the expenses. However, a problem arose on the first day of the home care services. Hello, I'm Mira, your caregiver. I'm looking forward to working with you. Nice to meet you, Mira. I'm also looking forward to working with you. While the caregiver engaged with my father-in-law, she kindly instructed me on nursing care techniques, which I found immensely helpful. I felt reassured by our decision to hire her. However, my husband returned home after being out. Luna, I never authorized home care services. What's going on here? He directed his frustration at me, despite my previous explanation that I couldn't manage caregiving alone anymore. Excuse me, Miss Caregiver? Please leave for today, he commanded, disregarding the scheduled time for her visit and effectively sending her away. Why did you arrange for home care without consulting me? I make the decisions in this house. You're not being a good wife by not listening to me. You should be able to handle caregiving by yourself. It's a waste of money, especially with the loan we took out for the renovations. Why can't you understand? I've told you numerous times that I can't handle it alone. Lucas, you've stopped helping with caregiving, haven't you? You're not keeping your promise. And the renovations were necessary for your father's safety. If he falls and gets hurt, caregiving will be even more challenging. Maybe you don't realize because you haven't been involved in caregiving for over a year now. What's all this sudden talk about? And besides, you're not working, so it's only natural for you to handle it, right? Who do you think is paying off the loan for the renovations? No matter how much I tried to explain, my husband couldn't grasp the situation. He genuinely believed that it was my sole responsibility to manage everything. Following that incident, I only arranged for home care when my husband was at work. Having someone to talk to, not just about caregiving, but also about the issues with my husband, and receiving advice proved to be incredibly beneficial. After several months had passed, one day my husband unexpectedly offered to take over caregiving. You've been out of the loop for over a year now. Go treat yourself. Get a haircut or go shopping. I'll handle everything today. I gratefully accepted his offer. I treated myself to a haircut for the first time in ages and enjoyed some quiet time sipping tea at a coffee shop I used to frequent. However, after about 4 hours, feeling anxious about leaving my inexperienced husband in charge, I decided to head home early. Upon returning home, I found an unsettling silence. My father-in-law was peacefully asleep in his room, but my husband was nowhere to be found. As I looked around the house, I discovered an envelope placed on the dining table. Inside the envelope were completed divorce papers and a letter. The letter stated, "Even after the divorce, please continue taking care of my dad. I'm going on a trip for a week, so please file the divorce papers by the time I return." That's what it said. My husband abruptly ended the call, leaving me bewildered. Just before the line went dead, I'd overheard a woman's voice calling his name. It was evident he was with someone, possibly the woman he planned to go on an overseas trip with. We had only been married for 3 years, and the thought of my husband having an affair weighed heavily on me. As I grappled with the possibility of his infidelity, tears of regret filled my eyes. But amidst this turmoil, a glimmer of comfort emerged when I heard my father-in-law's voice calling out to me as I left. Lately, he had struggled to remember my name, but today, for the first time in a while, he called it out. Concerned about how my husband had been caring for him in my absence, I rushed to check on my father-in-law. "Father, are you feeling all right? Was everything okay while I was gone? Luna, will the caregiver be here today?" To my surprise, my father-in-law seemed lucid and able to hold a coherent conversation. Could dementia improve over time? "She won't be here today. She'll come tomorrow morning." "All right. Could you get me some paper and a pen then?" Despite his usual struggle with writing, my father-in-law appeared unusually composed today. I had read that writing could help mitigate dementia symptoms, so I indulged him. Handing him paper and a pen, he began to write something, though I couldn't see what it was. After he finished, he sealed the paper in an envelope and handed it to me. "Please give this to the caregiver when she comes tomorrow." With that request, my father-in-law drifted back to sleep. Was this some sort of dementia exercise with Mira? Though I was curious about the letter's contents, I chose not to peek. Hours later, when my father-in-law woke up again, he seemed to have no recollection of our earlier conversation, not even remembering my name. That night left me questioning everything. As my father-in-law drifted off to sleep, I found myself lost in thought, re-examining the letter and divorce papers my husband had left behind. Reflecting on his recent behavior, I realized there had been several suspicious actions that I had overlooked in my focus on caregiving. If my husband was indeed cheating, part of me wanted to end the marriage and leave immediately. But I couldn't abandon my father-in-law, and with my inability to work while caring for him, I worried about financial independence. As morning approached, I remained undecided. When Mira arrived the next morning, I handed her the letter my father-in-law had given me. After reading it, Mira, not just a caregiver, but also a friend, approached me with concern. "Luna, situations like these are unfortunately common. I'm here to support you. The letter is about my husband wanting a divorce. Yes, it seems Mr. Henley noticed something was wrong and reached out for help. There's more in the letter, but we'll discuss it later. Since we have limited time before your husband returns, let's act quickly." With determination, Mira arranged for another caregiver to take over Mr. Henley's care. "Let's go, Luna. We have work to do." Following Mira, we arrived at a law firm. "Mira, why are we here?" I inquired. "You'll understand once we're inside," she replied cryptically. Though confused, I decided to trust Mira and followed her into the building. "Thank you for coming today. I'd like to discuss a request I received from Mr. Henley, primarily regarding the matter of gifting property during one's lifetime to you, Luna." The lawyer greeted us, handing me a document. Stunned, I accepted the paper. It was a notarized document, prepared by Mira at Mr. Henley's request. It outlined Mr. Henley's intention to gift me $36,000 and his apartment during his lifetime. Amazed by this unexpected gesture, Mira began to explain. "On the first day of my home visit, Mr. Henley brought up this matter. He wanted to express his gratitude towards you, Luna. However, as you weren't legally adopted by him, he couldn't pass on his assets to you upon his death. Hence, he decided to make this lifetime gift instead. I'm incredibly grateful. "I need to thank my father-in-law immediately," I exclaimed, eager to express my appreciation. But before we could leave, Mira interjected, "We need to make one more stop." After following Mira and making another stop, we returned home. Upon arriving, I expressed my deep gratitude to my father-in-law, even though he seemed unable to fully comprehend. I continued to thank him earnestly. Sadly, my father-in-law passed away 3 days later due to complications from his worsening dementia. I tried calling my husband, who was traveling abroad, to inform him, but he didn't pick up, perhaps assuming it was about the divorce. Left with no other option, Mira and I proceeded with the funeral arrangements amidst the gathering of relatives and friends. My husband's absence, as the biological son of my father-in-law, seemed to disappoint the relatives. When my husband returned home 2 days later, oblivious to the situation, he was immediately bombarded with questions from the relatives. "Hey, you need to help me out here. I swear I'm not cheating. I was just on vacation for a change. After taking care of my dad every day, you can't just assume the worst. Even if I say I was caregiving, there's no proof, right? But I know for a fact that you were spotted at the airport with your mistress, acting like a couple." After my accusation, my husband seemed resigned and silently endured the harsh words from the relatives. Several days later, once the tension had eased, I initiated divorce proceedings. I planned to move into the apartment my father-in-law had gifted me before his passing. As I made preparations for the divorce, my husband called. "Luna, where are you? It turns out you're the beneficiary of his life insurance, not me. All I was supposed to receive was his life insurance payout. What's going on? What'd you say to my dad while caring for him? You and that caregiver seem to have an understanding. You must have been planning this together." "It was your father's decision." Mira simply followed his wishes. "Indeed, we're getting divorced, and you and your mistress will be hearing from my lawyer soon. Please ensure you pay the settlement." "What do you mean we're divorcing?" "That's correct. Since you received my father's life insurance, consider it your settlement payment. I won't ask for anything." It seemed my husband had conveniently forgotten about leaving me the divorce papers to submit before his overseas trip. I was taken aback by his apparent disregard for our previous arrangement. "Weren't the divorce papers left by you with a letter asking me to submit them?" I reminded him. "And the life insurance is an inheritance from your father, not something I received from you. You should cover the cost of the settlement." My husband was rendered speechless and remained silent at my firm assertion. Realizing we were getting nowhere, we decided to end the call. Despite his subsequent attempts to contact me, I followed Mira's advice and changed my phone number. I still see Mira occasionally. Even after my father-in-law passed away, she continued to support both him and me more than my own family did. I'm truly grateful to Mira. Eventually, word seemed to reach my husband and his mistress, and I received a call from their lawyer. "Because I heard from Lucas that you were the boss." Although I was unaware of the circumstances, I deeply apologized for vacationing while Lucas's father was struggling. I've already paid compensation. I don't intend to see Lucas anymore. That was the end of it. I had expected resistance to paying the compensation, so I was surprised by the unexpected response. I couldn't fathom why a sensible person like her would fall for someone like my husband. Meanwhile, my husband ended up paying the compensation. It turned out her family was quite affluent, and my husband, attempting to keep up with her, depleted nearly all his savings. I heard he even footed the bill for the vacation as a display of goodwill. Whether or not he depleted his savings was of no concern to me. I intended for him to pay the full compensation, even if it took time. Since the family home was in my father-in-law's name, he wouldn't have trouble finding a place to live. However, with the remaining payments on the loan for the elder care renovation, coupled with the compensation, it would likely be a significant burden. Each month, even if it was deducted from my husband's salary, he wouldn't have much left. It was common knowledge among our relatives, so seeking help from them was out of the question. I hoped he would reflect on his actions. I relocated to the apartment my father-in-law had gifted me, where I now live comfortably. I'm using the money inherited from my father-in-law to pursue a caregiving certificate. Mira is assisting me in this endeavor. Not only do I aspire to be a caregiver, but I also aim to emulate Mira's support for families in need. Going on school trips costs a lot, especially if you go to a private school. You're probably not used to these expenses since you went to public school. It might be too much for you to pay for it. But don't worry, I'll get you a souvenir. The teacher in charge of my daughter's class is really straightforward, but sometimes he sounds like he's talking down to her. No one should talk down to or ignore others, especially not a teacher to a student. I'm Natalie. My brother and I were left without parents when we were young because they died in a bad car crash. I was only 8, and my brother was 15. After our parents died, our relatives had to figure out what to do with us. We didn't have many family members, and no one had enough money to take care of both of us. They said, "We can't handle both of them because we're struggling to raise even one." They already had 2 kids of their own, so having twice as many was out of the question. We realized that all we had left in life was each other. I was just a 3rd grader, clinging tightly to my brother. I cried constantly, and he felt helpless seeing me go through so much. At 15, he was barely an adult, and I was still a child. He could only do so much to help. After a while, one relative agreed to take me in. "Sorry, but we can't take both of you," they said. "We thought one of you could stay with us, and the other could go to a foster home or shelter." I understood the situation, but I knew being separated would make things even harder. "Please take care of her. I'll go to the foster home," my brother insisted, sacrificing for me. "I'll be okay. Just because I'm in foster care doesn't mean I won't be looked after," he assured me, holding my hand tightly. He made me feel like I deserved it, like he wanted this for me. As he held my hand, I couldn't help but cry and beg him to stay. The family that took me in didn't seem too thrilled, and I always felt like a stranger in their home, like there was a divide between us. I felt so alone. The shelter where my brother stayed was really far away. It was tough being apart, but we kept in touch by phone whenever we could. Even though I was with my relatives, my brother was my only real family. Without him, I started feeling more and more alone. I've always been sensitive and creative. I love expressing myself and letting my imagination run wild. As I felt lonelier, my emotions got stronger, and I started withdrawing into myself. Through middle and high school, that feeling of loneliness stuck with me. I began pouring my feelings onto paper, crafting imaginative stories that flowed naturally from my mind. When I shared some of my writing with my brother, he praised it and urged me to keep going. He said, "This is something special." After graduating, I dove into job hunting. With my passion for reading, I landed a job at a small publishing company that focused on literary magazines. If it had been a bigger company, I might not have applied, not because I wasn't qualified, but because it wouldn't have felt right for me. I put everything I have into my writing. It's kind of an obsession for me. I wanted to show my gratitude to the family who took me in and reassure my brother that I'm doing fine. Starting my first job was tough, and I made my fair share of mistakes, but I kept pushing myself, and before I knew it, 5 years had flown by. At the time, I was working in the editorial department, assisting one of the top writers. This writer had real talent and even won an award for his work. As his editor, I did my best to help him whenever he hit a roadblock. I shared my creative insights and gave feedback to help him improve. When my boss praised me, saying, "Natalie, I don't know what I'd do without your creative mind," it felt incredible. We had a strong bond in our working relationship, and then he surprised me by saying, "Natalie, you're not just the perfect partner at work, but in life too. Will you marry me?" I was totally caught off guard by his proposal. It was unexpected, especially since we hadn't openly dated or been romantically involved. But considering how close we were from working together, we knew a lot about each other. So I said, "Yes, I want to spend forever with you," and it just felt right. My brother was thrilled about our wedding. We hadn't spent much time together since we lived apart, so I couldn't wait to see him again. My husband understood how important it was for me to reconnect with my brother, and he was looking forward to meeting him too. My husband told me about his involvement with the shelter and the kids there. He didn't just contribute financially, he was actively mentoring and supporting the children. "There's one kid in particular who really stands out," he said. "He's driven and hardworking, and he even calls me Big Bro." He was glowing with pride, and I couldn't help but feel proud of him too. 2 years into our marriage, we were getting ready to welcome a new addition to our family. My husband's writing was gaining recognition, and he credited it to my advice and support. "Thank you for always believing in me. I love you," he'd say, making me feel so appreciated. Our daughter, Nicole, was born, and our lives were filled with joy and excitement. She was bursting with energy, and we were over the moon. One day, as I looked in the mirror, I realized that the loneliness and sadness I once felt had vanished. I smiled at my reflection, feeling grateful for everything I had overcome. Nicole blossomed into a kind and bright child. Before we knew it, my husband and I decided to enroll her in a private school. We found one that focused on nurturing independent and creative thinkers, offering a well-rounded education in academics, athletics, and the arts. Nicole thrived in that environment. Our careers were going well too. But when Nicole started 4th grade, we received devastating news about my husband. He was diagnosed with terminal cancer, and it had already spread too far for treatment by the time we found out. We went to the hospital together, but I returned home alone. I stayed by his side, praying for a miracle, but it wasn't meant to be. I was scared that the loneliness I once felt would return, but this time I had Nicole. I had to stay strong for her. I changed my mindset and focused on moving forward. Nicole and I leaned on each other for support as we faced life without my husband. Every moment became more precious, and I vowed to cherish every second. As Nicole started her final year of elementary school, she was nervous about meeting new classmates and teachers, but she knew she could handle it by the time. As the first semester ended, I noticed Nicole became increasingly quiet about school, especially after spring break. Starting the 2nd semester of 5th grade, she seemed even more distant. My worry grew. Was she not enjoying school? Was she being bullied? But as the 2nd semester neared its end, nothing changed. Today, I had to confront her. I couldn't ignore it any longer. "Hi, I'm Nicole, and I'm in 5th grade. Last year, my dad passed away, and it was really tough for me and my mom. But my uncle helped us through it, and I'm grateful my mom was able to heal. I was excited to start 5th grade, even though I knew I'd have a new teacher and classmates, except for one friend from last year. Our teacher is 28 and has been teaching for 6 years. He kind of gives off an older, annoying brother vibe. Our teacher wanted to get to know us better, so he had us fill out a get-to-know-me worksheet. Then he planned to interview us individually based on our answers. When it was finally my turn, he said, 'Your favorite subject is English, right?' I love reading too. But then he mentioned my dad's passing and my mom raising me alone, and I didn't like his tone. 'Just wondering, what does your mom do for work?' My mom works as a contract employee at a publishing company. After my dad passed away, she switched from full-time to contract work for the flexibility. I told her she didn't have to, but she prefers it. It's kind of like working part-time. How do you guys afford the school? You must be having a tough time." It felt like my teacher assumed we were barely getting by. It didn't seem sincere. Then he made more comments about our finances, like he pitied us, like we were pathetic. His attitude during that conversation really bothered me, so I tried to avoid him afterward. But he kept approaching me, usually when I was alone, and would say things like, "Struggling with money is stressful, right? Is your mom still working part-time? Can you afford next semester's tuition?" I tried to brush it off and be mature about it. Once, I even argued back, saying we weren't poor, but he didn't stop. So I decided it was best to keep my distance. He laughs and thinks it's because he's right. I decided to stop talking to my mom about school altogether because I didn't want to involve her. I could tell she was getting worried about me. Then, over spring break, my teacher assigned us a book to read, a popular novel by an author named Curie. The main character had a tough childhood, but eventually succeeded in life. After class, my teacher approached me when I was alone. "That book starts with a rough childhood, which I bet hits close to home for you," he said. "But let's be real, life isn't like a fairy tale. People from poor backgrounds usually stay that way. It's a cycle, you know?" He laughed and sarcastically apologized for making me read it. I felt so alone and powerless. I couldn't believe he was my teacher. I dreaded going back to school after spring break. I wanted to change my attitude to stop worrying my mom, but my teacher kept picking on me. I couldn't understand why he enjoyed taunting me. I tried ignoring him, but one day I couldn't take it anymore and snapped back. He was speechless at first, then angry. As he walked away, he muttered, "You're a feisty one, aren't you? I'll remember this." That's when I realized I should have just ignored him. At the end of the school year, there's this big 5th grade field trip everyone's excited about, even though it's not happening yet. People in class started buzzing about it, and once again, the teacher singled me out. "Those school trips are pricey, especially compared to public schools. Wonder if you'll have to sell the house to afford it," he said with a smirk. "I'm looking forward to it, but hey, don't sweat it if you can't make it. It's a luxury, and you've got more important things to worry about. Better to stay home." He even hinted it would be better for the school if I didn't go, like payback for snapping at him. Then there was this incident where a classmate's Nintendo Switch went missing. The teacher insinuated that kids from poor families might have stolen it out of jealousy, looking straight at me. My friend started asking questions, but I kept quiet to avoid his smart remarks. Later, when we were discussing middle school plans, the teacher suggested I reconsider staying at the private school. He doubted my mom could afford it and suggested we look into public school instead. He kept belittling us, saying it's stupid to stretch beyond our means. I couldn't take it anymore. I stormed out of the conference, tears streaming down my face. I was so frustrated with him. When I got home, my mom sat me down and asked what was really going on, so I told her everything. I was speechless hearing my daughter's words. I couldn't believe she'd been dealing with harassment at school, especially from her teacher. She didn't want me to worry, so she kept it all inside. I hugged her tight, apologizing for not knowing. I knew I had to talk to the teacher right away. I decided to record our conversation on my phone, just in case. "I assumed you'd be working hard, just like I am." His response confirmed my daughter's story. I demanded to know why he felt entitled to speak so horribly to Nicole. It was my duty as a parent to make her aware, even though it should be his job as a teacher, a responsibility he seemed to overlook. He had the audacity to suggest we send Nicole to public school if we were struggling financially, but he was wrong. We've never faced financial instability in our lives. His assumptions about our situation were unfounded. He kept interrupting and talking over me, making it impossible for us to have a civil conversation. His immature remarks pushed me to my limit. I warned him sternly, "That's enough. Don't ever speak to my daughter like that again, or there will be consequences." With that, I stormed out, leaving him speechless. After our confrontation, Nicole said he stopped bothering her altogether. I was surprised she let it go so easily, but thankfully, she made it through to graduation unscathed. Unfortunately, I couldn't make it to the parent-teacher conference afterward. Nicole confidently chose to attend the same middle school as her friends, despite the teacher's mocking laughter. "I'm here with my sister for my niece's graduation," Joseph said, suddenly realizing that Nicole was his niece, and then recognizing me as his sister. It was time for me to set the record straight. My late husband was a renowned writer, and we still receive royalties from his work. We're financially secure because of that. Plus, I have my own steady income. He was stunned. The author Curie, whose work inspired you and whom you admired, is actually me. It's a pseudonym I used. You can imagine the royalties from that alone. My husband and I enjoyed collaborating, but I also wanted to pursue my own writing. After his passing, I shifted to a more flexible job to focus on my writing full-time. I poured my heart into my writing, and as I continued, I improved. I couldn't have stopped working altogether, but I enjoy the company and value the routine. That's how I finally completed my book. Joseph saw parallels between his upbringing and the author's story, but instead of overcoming his past, he projected his resentments onto others, including my daughter. He wrongly assumed my family was struggling and belittled us. Such behavior is unacceptable, especially from a teacher. He's not fit for the role. He didn't respond and instead broke down in tears in front of everyone. My brother reported him to the principal, leading to Joseph's swift termination. I provided the principal with recorded evidence of my confrontation with Joseph, which left my brother speechless upon hearing. He expressed disappointment in Joseph's true character and doubted Joseph's ability to continue teaching with such behavior. I realized I had misjudged him. Don't worry. People like him are rare, otherwise the world would be doomed. I hope I never become like that. My brother chuckled at Joseph's behavior. You should focus on your own happiness now. I'm content, and you don't need to worry about me. Maybe it's time for you to start dating. What about you? You could date and be even happier. As long as you're happy, I'm happy. But a new dad? My daughter is wise beyond her years. She's my happiness. Why do we feel so alone? Is it in our minds, or do we close ourselves off from seeing the beauty around us? The answer lies within our hearts. When I told my mother-in-law I was going back to my hometown to have my baby, she replied, "Go ahead. I don't want to see you." I felt relieved because I had been waiting for her to say that. I thought to myself, finally, I won't have to deal with her anymore. My name is Emily, and I'm almost 28 years old. My mom passed away when I was very young, so my grandmother took care of me while my dad ran his clothing business. My dad was strict, and I always did what he said. I never dated anyone because of his rules, but I had accepted that as my fate. After college, I briefly worked for my dad, but he said it was too hard to work together, so I had to quit. He didn't want me to work elsewhere either, but seeing my friends get jobs and start families made me want to work too. One night, I asked my dad if I could get a job. He simply said no without explaining why. I tried to reason with him, saying I needed to gain experience in society, but he shut me down. He insisted I stay at home. Frustrated, I threatened to leave home and find work elsewhere. My dad didn't like that and told me to stop talking back. Feeling upset, I stormed out and cried in my room for a long time. Eventually, I called my college friend Lisa and asked if I could stay at her place for a while. Lisa, who lived in a luxurious condo her parents gave her, agreed, sensing something was wrong. I quietly packed my suitcase and left home, hoping not to disturb my dad. I wrote a note explaining that I was staying with a friend and left it on my desk. Then, I took a taxi to Lisa's apartment. When I arrived, she welcomed me with my favorite coffee. I thanked her and poured out everything about the argument with my dad and why I left home. Lisa sympathized, saying I deserved freedom. It hit me hard that I had always followed my dad's orders without question, but now I longed for my own independence. Lisa agreed, saying it was normal to want to meet new people and have fun. She asked if my dad knew I was there, and I told her I left a note, but he didn't know any of my friends. Lisa suggested we go to bed since it was late, and she had prepared a separate room for me to sleep in. The next day, Lisa went to work, and when I checked my phone, I saw several missed calls from my dad. Feeling bad for worrying him, I sent him an email to reassure him that I was okay. Later in the evening, after Lisa finished work, she invited me to join her for a drink. Excited but inexperienced with socializing over drinks, I agreed to go out. When I got to the meeting place, I found Lisa waiting with two men. She introduced them, pointing to her boyfriend first, then to the single man, Max. With a warm smile, Max introduced himself, and our relationship began. Max worked at a small company in the clothing industry. At first, I wondered if Max's company was similar to my father's, but I quickly pushed the thought aside. Max's family situation was different from mine. He only had his mother around, but he didn't elaborate, and I didn't pry. One day, Max expressed his desire to meet my father, but I wasn't ready to go back home yet, despite exchanging emails with my dad. Instead, I suggested meeting Max's mom. He eagerly agreed, even suggesting we could visit her that very day. Wanting to bring a gift, I stopped by a bakery for a cake, knowing Max's mom appreciated such gestures. As it turned out, my mother-in-law not only appreciated gifts, but also became irritable if not presented with one. When we arrived at Max's house, his mother greeted us at the door, having received a message from him. She immediately questioned me about my life, expressing skepticism about my employment status and implying I lived a privileged life. I explained about my deceased mother and my father's job, but she dismissed my responses. Max, sensing the tension, urged us inside, asking if I had brought anything. Feeling rushed, I handed over the cake, apologizing for its simplicity. My mother-in-law snatched it from me, making a sarcastic remark before accepting it. In just a few minutes, I grew to dislike her, feeling sorry for anyone who had to deal with her as a mother-in-law. As soon as we stepped into the living room, my mother-in-law bombarded me with questions to which I responded with vague answers. However, she persisted, firing questions at me as if I were a suspect in an interrogation room. Feeling overwhelmed by the relentless questioning, I whispered to Max that I should probably leave soon. This seemed to infuriate my mother-in-law, her face flushing with anger. She accused me of hating her and giving insincere responses. Max tried to calm her down, but she lashed out, questioning his choice in bringing such a supposedly rude woman home. Annoyed, I defended myself, asking for specific feedback if there was something I could improve. This only seemed to aggravate her more, as she accused me of being cheeky and disliking her. I wanted to agree, but I just couldn't. I'm exhausted and longing to go home, I explained. My mother-in-law's response caught me off guard. How audacious of you. I wonder what kind of upbringing your parents gave you. They must have been lacking. Her words stung, and tears welled up in my eyes. Now you're crying for sympathy. If you want to leave so badly, go ahead. It might do you good. Oh, and by the way, I'll give this cake you brought to my dog Charlie, but he's quite picky, so he might not eat such a cheap cake. She pointed at the cake I had brought. Max intervened, telling his mother to stop. You really don't know how to judge people, he scolded her. Max's remark seemed to deflate his mother's argumentative energy. All I want is the best for you, Max, she countered, her tone softer. Max stood his ground, asserting his adulthood and his ability to handle his own affairs. His words brought tears to his mother's eyes, and she left the room, visibly upset. Feeling hurt by the harsh words of Max's mother, I decided to leave. However, Max caught up with me and apologized sincerely. Emily, I'm sorry for my mom's behavior. She might be feeling threatened, thinking she's losing me. I'll talk to her about it, okay? Please don't let this incident discourage you from visiting again. His words reassured me, but I couldn't shake off the hurt caused by his mother's comments about my parents. Max, what your mother said about my parents really hurt me. I don't think I want to see her again. As the sadness washed over me, tears welled up, and I found solace in Max's comforting embrace. After a while, he suggested we go somewhere, and we ended up at the beach, sitting on a sandy bench, watching the waves for hours. 2 months later, I discovered I was pregnant. When I shared the news with Max, he proposed marriage. Let's make it official. We don't need a grand ceremony, but we can live together in my house. I don't earn much, so renting an apartment isn't feasible. I'll talk to my mom about being more considerate towards you, Emily. Despite my reservations about living with his mother, I agreed, realizing it was our only option. Okay, I'll do my best to get along with your mother. And so, I found myself living with my mother-in-law after getting married. I returned home to inform my father about the decision. His face lit up with joy when he spotted me. It's wonderful to see you looking so well. We've been in touch, but it feels like ages since our last meeting. My father greeted me warmly. I'm sorry, Dad. I have something important to discuss with you, I replied, sensing his anticipation shift to curiosity. I proceeded to share the news of meeting Max, my pregnancy, and our plan to marry. My father listened intently, his expression unreadable. When I finished, he offered a simple, "Well, congratulations. I can't wait to meet my grandchild," though his smile seemed strained. "Thank you, Dad. I'm sorry for causing you any pain," I apologized, tears streaming down my cheeks. To my surprise, my father's eyes glistened with tears too. Instead of anger, his tender response hurt me more deeply. Eventually, I moved into my mother-in-law's home. Lisa, who had been a pillar of support since I left home, expressed her excitement about meeting my baby and shared her own hopes for marriage. Despite the mixed emotions, we made plans to dine together. Originally scheduled for Sunday, my mother-in-law insisted on moving the date to Saturday, citing superstitions. The move went smoothly, with the movers diligently transferring my belongings while my mother-in-law observed silently. Despite repeated warnings from the movers about the danger, my mother-in-law refused to step back. Once the move was completed, she called me over and questioned if I had given the movers their due payment. Confused, I asked, "Huh?" Sensing my confusion, she assumed I was feigning ignorance and left to rectify what she thought was a mistake. When she returned, she handed an exorbitant sum to the movers' leaders, assuming I hadn't provided enough. Stunned by the amount, I questioned her decision. "You gave them that much?" I exclaimed. She brushed it off, claiming it was for the best and citing superstition about avoiding curses by being generous. Knowing it would only lead to another argument, I remained silent, unwilling to engage further. My mother-in-law wore a smug expression, convinced of her righteousness. Just then, Max arrived and noticed the tension. He intervened, asking his mother what had happened. With a dismissive reply, she walked away. Max reassured me, expressing his disapproval of his mother's behavior. Grateful for his support, I decided not to mention the incident to avoid further conflict with my mother-in-law, knowing it would only worsen our relationship. After settling in, my mother-in-law noticeably avoided speaking to me, leaving me in peaceful silence for weeks at a time. One day, Max brought home some work documents in an envelope marked with the name Star Textiles Incorporated, causing me to gasp. This was a familiar name from my time working at my father's company. They were one of our subcontractors. Curious, I asked Max about the envelope's origin. "Is this from your company?" I inquired innocently. "Yes. Why do you ask?" he responded. Sensing it was best not to mention the connection between his company and my father's, I simply replied, "I was just curious. I realized I don't know much about your company." Max explained, "We're just a small subcontractor. If our parent company were to drop us, we'd go bankrupt instantly, and all the employees would lose their jobs." Max chuckled softly, a hint of nostalgia in his expression. Around a month later, I noticed a change in Max's routine. He started returning home from work later than usual and seemed visibly upset. Concerned, I asked him what was wrong. "You've been coming home late lately. Is everything okay?" "You seem different," I inquired. Max confessed, "The company is facing some challenges." "What kind of challenges?" I probed further. Max sighed. "The parent company unexpectedly slashed our orders by half. Our boss is desperately trying to convince them to maintain our business relationship. And we're also searching for new clients. But if things don't improve, we might go bankrupt." As I listened to Max's worries, I considered asking my dad for help. However, I knew my father's strict principles wouldn't allow him to assist a business partner based on personal feelings alone. It seemed like many of the company's partners were facing similar hardships. I disclosed to Max that my father's company was the parent company of his. Initially surprised, Max pleaded with me earnestly, his eyes gleaming with hope. "Emily, please implore your father not to cut ties with us," he urged. Regretfully, I explained, "Max, my father is firm when it comes to business. Personal matters wouldn't influence his decisions." Desperate, Max persisted. "Could you at least try?" Reluctantly, I agreed, knowing it likely wouldn't sway my father. Yet Max knelt before me, tears in his eyes, begging for help. Please, I beg you, he pleaded. Frustrated, I implored him to stop, but I promised to speak to my father nonetheless. As Max lifted his head, tears of relief streamed down his face. That night, I called my father and relayed Max's plea. Surprisingly, my father agreed to help. So, Max works for Star Textiles, Incorporated. Then I must assist them, he stated. I was taken aback, expecting him to decline outright due to his strict business principles. However, he outlined 2 conditions. First, he would continue business with Star Textiles but wanted Max to join his company. Second, he requested that both Max and I move in with him. Puzzled, I questioned his motives for wanting us to live with him. Uncomfortably, my father admitted, I just want my daughter close by. I accepted his conditions but sought clarification on why he had decided to reduce dealings with Star Textiles initially. He explained that a new company had offered an enticing proposal, prompting the shift in partnerships. Upon conducting some research, we discovered that the new company my father intended to partner with had a history of unfulfilled promises, prompting us to reconsider the deal. So, Star Textiles would have been fine even if I hadn't intervened? I asked, amused by the irony. Maybe, my father chuckled, and I couldn't help but laugh along. After hanging up, I promptly informed Max of my father's conditions. He sighed with relief at the news that Star Textiles was no longer at risk, but expressed hesitance about joining my father's company. It's difficult for me to leave Star Textiles, Emily. I've built strong bonds there, and am unsure about starting anew, he admitted. Respecting his decision, I relayed his sentiments to my father, who acknowledged Max's dedication and allowed him to remain at Star Textiles. However, he remained firm about us moving in with him. Delighted by my father's decision, I cautioned Max not to disclose my father's involvement to his mother, knowing she would disapprove. He agreed, understanding the importance of keeping it a secret. Weeks later, as the time for our child's birth approached, I made the decision to return home. Despite having only my father and grandmother there, it felt preferable to staying with my mother-in-law. Waiting for the opportune moment when my mother-in-law was occupied with her afternoon tea, I approached her to break the news. Mother-in-law, regarding my childbirth, I've chosen to go back home. It's just my dad and my active grandmother there, I explained calmly. Her response was as expected, filled with disdain and resentment. By all means, go back. I don't want to see your face, she spat out. Unfazed by her reaction, I assured her, you won't have to see me anymore. Max will soon be moving in with my parents as well. Her confusion was palpable as she questioned my decision. Max is too busy with work to move. I reassured my mother-in-law, trying to ease any tension. Just then, Max entered and excitedly informed his mother, Mom, everything is going to be fine with the company now. Emily helped me out. Confused, she asked, What are you talking about? Max explained, Emily's dad is the owner of the parent company of the company I work for. Shocked, my mother-in-law's demeanor changed as she turned her attention to me. Emily, I had no idea you were connected to Max's company in that way. I've been terribly rude to you, she admitted, bowing deeply. It's all right now, I replied, trying to diffuse the tension. However, she surprised us all by requesting to live with my parents as well. Both Max and I declined, preferring not to dwell on the past hurtful interactions. I don't want to live with you, mother-in-law. Being here would only remind me of everything that's happened, I explained gently. Her tears flowing, she pleaded desperately, but we stood firm in our decision. Months later, we decided to visit my mother-in-law's house, only to find it empty and eerily quiet. Concerned, Max called out for his mother, receiving no response. As we searched the house, we found her emaciated and frail, lost in her own world. Despite our attempts to engage her, she remained silent, focusing only on the cake we had brought. As she devoured it hungrily, I couldn't help but think, well, mother-in-law,